Okay, I'm going to get started. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Wednesday, Hump Day. Very happy to be here. I'm really glad everybody can join us. This is all part of the virtual Women's Health Lunch and Learn series, and this is the series that we've put together to focus on women's health issues. We're at this point provided by women for women. And today I'm very happy to have several presenters. The first presentation is going to be titled The Balancing Act. So it's a multi-generational professional women sharing their insights and going into issues like career, education, caring for the elderly parents throughout the lifespan. And we have Maria Sudeck, who's a PhD and an associate professor at the Rowan College of Education, and Jennifer Sedlock, who's an online learning experience coordinator in the division of Rowan Global Learning and Partnership. So I'm so happy to welcome Maria and Jennifer. And after they're completed, we will have Dr. Jennifer LeCompte, who's the director of the Rowan Integrated Special Needs Center, and she will present her personal focus on Read to Lead in her book club journey. So I thank everybody for being here, both presenters and our attendees. I also want to mention, just as a little bit of a plug, if anybody has ideas of topics that they would like to see in future programs, we are very open to that. We plan to carry this on in June and then take a break for the summer. But we're going to be holding this on the second Wednesday of every month at noon. And in addition to being available live, it also is on YouTube and available in perpetuity if anybody wants to go over anything. So once again, I'm Linda Brecker. I'm a rheumatologist and internist in the Department of Internal Medicine at the Rowan School of Osteopathic Medicine. And I'm going to now let Maria and Jennifer take over.
Thank you, Linda. So again, our title is The Balancing Act, Multi-Generational Professional Women Share Their Insights. So a bit of an introduction. I'm an associate professor at the College of Education, and I've been at Rowan for about 21 years. I'm a former classroom teacher and school administrator and had done that for about 20 years prior to Rowan, so you can guess my age. And let me see all of the things the roles that I play. I'm a mother, a wife, a daughter, a sister, an aunt, and a grandmother. I had forgotten that for a moment. And I'm a baby boomer, which is the age range. If you were born between 1946 and 1964, you too are a baby boomer. Some generalizations about baby boomers. We are, as a group, optimistic, we're workaholics, we're team-oriented, and at work, we tend to be motivated and loyal, and we make excellent coaches and mentors. Jen?
And my name is Jennifer Sedlock. Thank you for having us today. I'm the online learning experience coordinator and an instructional designer for Rowan Online for Rowan Global. Formerly, I was a K-12 public and academic librarian, and currently also I am a doctoral candidate in the Rowan University Educational Leadership Program. Just finished this week my last class, and I'm jumping into dissertation phase. So on top of all that, I'm also a mother, a wife, a daughter, a sister, and an aunt. And I was born during Generation X between 1965 and 1980. And characteristics for Gen Xers include that we're flexible, very informal, skeptical, and very independent. We're motivated by diversity, and we feel that we have perfected the work-life balance. So why are we having this conversation? Over the past year through the pandemic, Maria and I have worked together a lot for course development and courses online. And we always start our conversations with, how are you? But we realized that those conversations would talk more about the trials and tribulations of professional life through the pandemic. So we thought we would expand this conversation, look at it from a generational perspective and share it with you so we can commiserate or support each other or just reflect on experiences that we've both had. Now, we're going to talk a little bit today about shifting the way we work, to educating kids at home, isolation, empty nesting, and a couple of other things, and how through all of that we've managed our health and wellness through that. But we're also not saying that any one particular generation has a set of issues that they're dealing with. Anything that has come up through the pandemic is cross-generational. We just realized that some of Maria's friends were experiencing a lot of the similar things, and that was part of being a baby boomer, and a lot of Gen Xers and millennials and traditionalists were experiencing other things in other ways. So these really are cross-generational. But we will get started with talking about shifting the way we work.
So I'd like to talk a bit about that. Prior to the pandemic, work was a source of stress in its own sense. But we now have the added layer of the pandemic. The way in which we work has shifted to much more work at home. We've been carving out home offices, and for most of us, at a level that never existed prior to the pandemic. We're sharing space and resources with other household members, adults, those of us who are baby boomers, the Gen Xers and younger who have other children at home. Another issue is family members who have lost their jobs, and others of us have our spouses that were working outside the home, and there was a concern about being exposed to the pandemic. So we needed to practice stress reduction techniques, and we needed to be mindful of more well-being. An idea that I was sharing with others was to turn it off, to pick a reasonable time to stop working. And the difficulty was, and still is that work and home have become the same place for us. Another statistic that I found interesting was that 65% of all baby boomers are still working and plan to work well past the age of 65 or 66. Jen?
And for me, the way that I worked pre-pandemic was great. I had manageable work stress and I had manageable home stress. And just like my generation, my work-life balance was perfect. I had great separation. I had my duties at home in the morning. I would drive to work for 30 minutes. I would do my duties at work. I would drive home for 30 minutes, and then I would do home. Work life was perfect. Then boom, when the pandemic hit, just like a lot of people in my generation, there was a complete overhaul of education, a complete overhaul of how we view things and how we experience things, specifically online, which is my career, as well as my schooling, as well as my kids' schooling. The overhaul of education was huge, and that exposed me and my work exponentially. And therefore, just like Maria said, there was no work-life imbalance. There was no separation. Everything was happening all at the same time, and it was enormous. The amount of work that we had was really, really high. And that caused lots of blurred lines for me in my house. The busyness of the work separated, like there was just no separation of work life. And my office space is always visible. When I'm working on my doctorate, I'm in the dining room, so that way I can be available for those who need it. But then when I started working from home, I'm still in the dining room. I'm in the corner of the dining room, but I'm available, and the office space is always here. And that created a lot of guilt for me. And quite a few of my friends in Generation X shared those experiences too. Many of them are teachers. They would be teaching in a corner of their room, but their own children were there, and it blurred those separations of work and life. For coworkers, I miss my coworkers. We would get together after work. We've got great collaboration. We've got wonderful office space. But I got new coworkers in the pandemic, and those are my sons and my dogs. I love them to pieces, but wow, do they need things all day long that my coworkers at the office don't need? And one of those needs was really education. And educating children at home became another full-time job on top of working at home too. And I really felt like I was back to my K-12 teaching days and wearing multiple hats. In fact, I love Time Hop because it reminds me of things that happened in the past. And a Time Hop memory came up in March. And evidently last March I posted on Facebook, I said, my son hurt himself in virtual gym class today and had to go to the school nurse. I then realized that I was the school nurse. And I totally forgot that that situation had happened. But I remember him doing something and falling, and then I had to be the school nurse while I was in the middle of a phone call for work. So again, that work-life balance is really called into question, especially as we're educating children at home. The question of the day became, when do you have meetings? Well, I have a meeting at 9, 10, 11. When do you have to do your math? When is this? That all kind of got thrown on top of me as the person, as the adult who was in the house at the time. In addition to that, for educating children, I became a master at learning management systems. I know Canvas really well because that's the job that I perform. But then I had to learn my elementary school son's learning management system, my middle school son's learning management system, and then 2 others because they decided to change in the middle. So that work-life balance was called into question all the time. Motivation is tough. It's still tough today. It was great in the beginning when we thought it was only going to be 2 weeks. And then it waned a lot in the middle. We're like, come on, guys, we got this. We can do it. And now that our schooling is back to a hybrid scenario where my children do go to school a couple of days a week for a few hours, we're trying to chug along toward the end of the school year. So motivation is really tough. And that's hard for me as I'm trying to keep it together by being real and being strong. And come on, guys, we've got this. But a lot of us are dealing with the nightmares of schedule management too. Again, I have an elementary student and I have a middle school student in my house. That's 2 different districts where I live. So with that are different schedules, multiple formats. Who's going remote this week? Who's hybrid this week? What time do you have to go to the bus? You're only a half day today. Are you sure? That's a lot of balls in the air and hats to wear. And a lot of my generation was experiencing that as well. At the end of the day, as a lifelong educator for me, I'm always concerned with, are they learning anything? And I don't know. I don't think we'll really understand the ramifications of the educational shifts for a long time. And I think it's going to be a good year or 2 before I even can answer, did they learn anything during this pandemic? Maria.
Going to shift a bit to another topic, caring for elder parents. Now, both of my parents have passed away prior to the pandemic. So this is something that I've only experienced peripherally through relatives and close friends. But during the pandemic, it's been very difficult. There have been closed funerals, virtual funerals, and funerals and services that had to be postponed for weeks and even months. Close friends have elderly parents either living with them, living alone away from them, or in assisted living. And again, this is very difficult. I have a cousin who had to visit her mother in an assisted living, and they would both be at a window, knocking on the window, and they're both crying because they couldn't physically see each other. So this was an unprecedented time for those of us who had older parents. And issues related to parents or relatives, loneliness, isolation, being physically separated and physically distanced in a way that we never thought we would have had to experience before. Jen?
And for many of my Gen X friends, they were able to have their parents move in with them during COVID. But my baby boomer parents lived way too far away for that, and I do not have living grandparents at this time. However, that being said, we did have a non-COVID related illness that impacted us greatly. In April of last year, my father passed due to cancer. But COVID restrictions did not allow me or my brother or sister or any of our family to really go and visit or to be with my mom at the time to kind of go through all of that. And we did not have the opportunity to have funerals as well, just like Maria had said that some of her friends experienced. That also created additional stressors on top of that. Another side of that, though, I do have my traditionalist in-laws. They're in their late 70s, early 80s that do live close by. So for them, caring was not so much that we were that we took them in or anything, but we were very cautious and restrictive when it came to their movements. Their shopping was restricted, their medical visits were restricted, even visitation with us and the family were really restricted. So for me, both sets of parents experienced isolation, but in different ways due to the impacts of COVID. And Maria is going to discuss a little bit more about the feelings of isolation.
Empty nesters and isolation, which for myself was a huge issue during this pandemic. I felt myself experiencing a sense of sadness and loneliness that I'd never experienced before. My husband and I live in a 55 and over development, very near main campus here in Glassboro. And one of the delights of this neighborhood had been, prior to the pandemic, the socialization. We would have happy hour every Friday evening. We had an outdoor pool. We had parties and holiday celebrations and Saturday night dinner club down at the clubhouse. And that stopped. That closed last March of 2020. And we actually haven't even opened up yet. We're considering opening the clubhouse in June, and I believe our swimming pool is going to be open. So things that I missed, in addition to our neighbors, I missed going to work and seeing my colleagues. Zoom is better than nothing, but it's just not the same as actually physically going into James Hall or where my office is and actually seeing my friends and colleagues. Again, the social events in my community, the pool and the clubhouse being closed, and the general concern for this age group, the fear of being exposed to the pandemic. Seeing family members the first few months was difficult, and then it became non-existent. Travel, myself and many of our friends, cruises and travel, both inside of the United States and obviously outside, were canceled. And getting together with friends and relatives was put on hold for months. You're just getting back to a sense of normalcy and seeing other people and seeing friends with vaccination and other ways of feeling safe. So it's been a very difficult time for those of us who are empty nesters and baby boomers. Jen?
So through all of this, Maria and I, through this whole year, we shared all of these experiences with each other, and we realized that our health and wellness was of utmost importance, but both of us really commiserated that self-care for each of us really went to the bottom of the list. A lot of us went through kind of an identity crisis this year because we are wearing too many hats or juggling too much at the same time, and we're losing our sense of self. I know for me, I feel like I'm giving less than 75% to every facet of my life, and that's mentally and physically draining. And I realized probably like maybe last summer that I totally perfected the I'm fine response. Jen, how are you? I'm fine. Where my voice would go up and my head would cock to the side. And how are you doing today? I'm fine. You just kind of put up that front, and it was built because of the loss of control due to all of the societal restrictions and everything that went on top of it. So Marie and I started shifting our conversation then. So how do we deal with this amidst the pandemic? Well, you manage what you can little by little. And I actually think Maria said that to me. She's like, well, manage what you can little by little. And I know that, we all know that, but sometimes you need someone else to tell you that. So through that, we're going to go over just a couple of things that we went through with nutrition and exercise and with self-care to kind of get you through get you into the mindset of maybe what you can do to get you through it as well. Marie and I talked a lot about people who said, oh, the pandemic will be fine. I'll be in great shape because I'm home. And for many people, that did not happen. Pre-pandemic habits disappeared if you were an exercise junkie or like a real good health food person. And a lot of pandemic habits appeared. I know that there are memes and stuff out there of Kermit the Frog being really skinny in 2019, and then a picture of him next to himself being really plump in 2020. For me, exercise became very solitary and individualized. I'm a runner, which is a solitary thing to do. And I did continue running throughout the pandemic, but I also went to the gym and boot camp, and I missed that. And that was it wasn't really enjoyable for me. So I started doing that less and less and less. But then I realized Well, Jen, there's a direct correlation with the mental and physical states. So if your body's moving and you're feeling great and you've got that runner's high, then you're mentally going to be good. So I said, you know what? I'm going to recognize when I'm zoomed out, but I'm going to find creative ways to continue that exercise. And that was running, even in the rain, even in the snow. That was walking. And fortunately, my gym was one of those gyms that did put their classes online. But with that, I kind of became a little obsessed with it. I made sure that I did something hardcore every single day. And that has its side effects too. You really do need to listen to your body to avoid those setbacks. I popped my meniscus in November of last year. I needed surgery in January. So you have to learn that balance when it comes to it. And nutrition is the same way. When the pandemic hit, we saw food insecurities. You saw the news reports of the long lines of people waiting for food. Those who have nutritional lifestyles or special diets or food insecurities, there was a fear of food availability. I have another picture that came up in my time hop of me taking a photo of a grocery store way back in the beginning where the lines of the carts of food were out the door. I myself, with a specific nutritional lifestyle, I was worried, am I going to be able to get the food that I need to eat? And so then I kind of switched and I went into a food over prep, where our freezer down in the basement, it was chock full of food, and we prepped and we were ready to be inside for 6 months. But with that comes processed food, shelf-stable food that's not always healthy. You can obsessively prepare and have over-preparedness, which causes redundancies. And if you're tired of eating the same food all the time, you can order out, which is great for many restaurants that they were able to shift and become creative during the pandemic. But that ease of use could also lead to bad habits. A lot of my friends were saying, "Oh my gosh, it's great! I'm sitting on the couch. I order a pizza through my phone. 20 minutes later, it just appears on my doorstep. I don't have to give any money. I don't have to talk to anybody. I don't have to worry about it." Well, that really can cause a lot of bad habits. So for me, I started, I learned about mindful eating, and I kind of like a little mini meditation while you're eating, where you're savoring each bite, not thinking anything in general or about the food itself, but mindfully eating instead of mindless eating, which all of us can have done before with a bag of chips on the couch watching TV, and it's like robotic, go in, but instead you mindfully eat. And for me, I also started thinking, tomorrow's a new day, no regret and just reset. And I guess that's my kindergarten or fifth grade librarian days coming back to me, where I needed a rhyme to get me to go. But that was a mantra that I really followed. Tomorrow is a new day, no regret and just reset. So that also helped. That helped with my exercise and my nutrition, and it also helped with my social emotional health management as well, which Maria will talk about now.
So I'd like to go over with you some self-care and socio-emotional management, health management ideas. From my perspective as an educational psychologist, these are really areas that I believe are helpful for all of us. And for purposes of time, I'm going to go through them relatively quickly. So the first group is practicing mindfulness and finding tranquility in a frantic world. And there are some bullet points under those ideas. The second idea, which is really probably one of the most important ones, is getting a good night's sleep. That's different for everyone, whether it's music, powering down our electronics, a hot bath, a meditative reading of some sort. The third area is to keep in touch with friends and family, even if you can't physically get there, whether it's video chats or phone calls, sending little notes, but making sure you stay connected. And finally, number 4, and where they are now, we can venture out. We can go for walks in the neighborhood, outdoor dining, indoor dining, many places of worship are open. So it's time to move out of our safe space in our homes and venture out to see people again. And another list of ideas to consider. Jen and I just put this together. We thought, these are some things we could also share. Hobbies, learning something new, a language or a musical instrument. So in the midst of all this, my husband put the Duolingo app on his phone, and he's been learning Italian to get ready for the trip to Italy when we can get back to Europe. Volunteering, even if it's online, there's many groups that we can get together with, and also working in our local food banks, which is mutual interest groups, journaling, asking for insight from others in your circle and other generations. This is where Jen and I connected. Our personal relationship really blossomed from our professional relationship here at the university. And again, attending mindfulness events and other interesting events, such as this one. And Jen, I'm going to leave that last thought for you because that was your thought.
Just breathe and keep breathing, whether you do it through your nose and out the mouth, or you need a big kind of breath. Just breathe and keep breathing, because we will get through this. So thank you.
Thank you. And we're ready for questions.
Shall we do the questions at the end so that we make sure we have adequate time for the next speaker?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
So should I just get started then?
Why don't you introduce yourself and get started? That'd be great.
I sure will. Let me just make sure that I share appropriately. Awesome. Can you see these slides? Not my next slide. Thanks. So I'm Dr. Jennifer LeCompte. I am a med peds physician, so I'm a pediatrician and an internist, and I'm the medical director of the Risen Center, Rowan Integrated Special Needs Center. We're a primary care practice caring for patients with physical, intellectual, and developmental disabilities with embedded behavioral health and care coordination services. We started about 2 years ago, but just recently moved into, right in the middle of the pandemic, moved into the Rowan Medicine Sewell campus. So, you know, as we start to open up, I would hope that you would all come out and get out of your houses, off of Zoom, and come to see us at our new Rowan Medicine Sewell campus. I know that hopefully we're going to get Dr. Brecker here as well to do some bone health, both with our patients, but also with the community down here. So, so I'm going to talk about Reading to Lead, my book club journey. I feel like I have to tell you also, just from based on the last presentation, that I am also a Gen Xer. But not, unlike Jen, I don't think I fall into the ability to really have work-life balance, but I think that's probably based on my career choice, not necessarily a deficiency as a Gen Xer. But I did use book clubs really to grow and learn. I also consider myself a professional commuter until I came to Rowan. So I joined Rowan, I'll be starting my 4th year in July, and I was commuting from New Jersey to Delaware. So my experience for reading was largely in the Audible version. So I'm going to be sharing with you. So I will tell you, many of my people who love books criticize that I read via the Audible version, but really I'm trying to just figure out how we get this all in all of our obligations. How do we still build our repertoire? So hoping that I can just share some resources with you so that we can access some leadership skills that are easy and reflect on my experience. And then especially since I have an expert, Jennifer, with online learning, talk about future opportunities within this group for possible book clubs. So this is a reality. There's just not enough time to get it all done. And if you're anything like me, we're all trying to keep calm, but really are distracted. So I am much like the dog from Up movie. And I share this because I'll bring another resource here, Creativity Inc., that really does bring in all the Pixar movies. So you'll see a lot of their images here, but there's just not enough time to get it all in. And so that's why I use Audible resources. So it was a gift from my husband, an Audible subscription. I'm not going to get any I don't have any disclosures. I don't have any stock in Audible, but it's definitely been a help for me. First during my commuting experience, but especially now when I'm just looking for additional resources. I don't have the opportunity to go to conferences like we once used to, so we're trying to find some other resources. Plenty of podcasts. One that I love is Core IM, so I can not only continue my clinical opportunities, but also build my leadership. There's a lot of other opportunities like through Twitter. There's plenty of resources that you can embark on to really help you develop as a leader and as a female leader especially. So one that I found this, I guess it was just in this past 2 years that I've really been using on a regular basis is the Read to Lead podcast. So, and that's why I came up with the title, because this has really been a huge source of entertainment, of personal growth, of really thinking about myself, even in medicine, which I consider very much a service industry, thinking about it a lot more in the business and entrepreneurial aspect of medicine. We've had to transition in this pandemic to very different ways of delivering medicine. So using telehealth and telemed, and really how do we develop ourselves? The Read to Lead podcast really helped me do that. And hopefully, I think, and Joanne, you can point me out if I'm wrong, but I think we're going to be sharing a slide. So I linked the hyperlinks to these different resources so that everyone can enjoy them. They're all really free, so you don't have to have even any you put in your email, but you don't have to subscribe to any of them. They're all available. So the Read to Lead podcast has been really helpful because basically they review all the books that I may or may not want to read, and it takes about 30 minutes for them to review them. I'm going to try to see if I can link into it. And I'm just going to stop sharing my screen just so I can get to the right screen. And just show you the format that the Read to Lead podcast has, because what's really nice about it is, I'll just make sure, so you can all see the website for the Read to Lead, or are you still seeing my presentation?
Read to Lead.
Oh, great.
Yep, we can see the Read to Lead.
Great. So what's really nice is, again, you just put it on your podcast. They're about 30 minutes, but then you can actually go to the website and they'll link you into all of the resources that the book or the summary got to. So it's a really easy link to get multiple resources. And I'm going to talk about one of the other ones in just a minute. So since I'm on the screen, I'm just going to switch over. So Curbsiders is another one that I really enjoy. It's a clinical resource, but they just recently started a Women in Medicine series, and this was their launch for the Women in Medicine series called Women in Medicine Be Bold. And again, a great way to find your community and to have like-minded individuals and have access to multiple resources. So for Curbsiders, while many of their podcasts are clinical, they do have a lot of mission-driven content. So this Women in Medicine series is one of those. What's really nice is, again, then they pull out the clinical pearls. So one that I think it's going to be easier to show you on this screen, which is why I'm not getting back into my PowerPoint presentation, is just how there's so many gender parity gems, and how you can be bold, and they give you some other resources. So I really do feel like this, and I thank Dr. Brecker and Dr. Kaiser-Smith for leading this, is finding our squad. Because I really do think that the women who join this really are going to become part of our squad, and I think that we have many opportunities to learn from each other on how to be bold. And even so in this particular podcast, there's a lot of information of how do we gender neutralize our language so that we can help promote women instead of disparage them, especially as we start to give feedback, and especially when we're not able to see each other anymore. I think finding our squad is really important. So this podcast, again, I gave everyone the link, so you can share this presentation so that everyone can have the link. So I'm just going to switch back. All right, so I already showed you the Curbsiders. So again, there's lots of different things. One of the other resources that Curbsiders does, and it's why I actually love the podcast, is that at the outset of the introduction of the speakers, they invite the guest to share their favorite book or resource. And again, it could be medicine, it could be just something that every person should read, or it could be a medical journal or something that they enjoy. So I find that this one is really appropriate for women, that the art of tooting your own horn without blowing it. I think that why I love, again, this format is that women tend to not toot their own horn, and we have to create venues that allow us to be brave and to toot our own horn. So I really find that these series really do help us find our squad, and then hopefully then find our mentors. So again, you'll see lots of clips from the book Creativity Inc. So that was the first journal club that I did when I got to Rowan, and it's a great book about creating culture. And I think that I'm still looking for mentors all the time. What's really great about looking for mentors is you can find mentorship in students, in residents, in our upper level leadership, but really, finding out where they are. And so again, I'm just happy that we create these kind of venues so that we can have more mentorship. It seems like Maria and Jen found that as well. Part of my initial experience of really looking for a mentor is when I read Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In. So her whole book chapter on Are You My Mentor was based on my very favorite first book that I read in kindergarten, Are You My Mother? And it was kind of, it's the same premise where the lost bird would go around to different people and say, are you my mother? Are you my mother? And sometimes I feel like I was doing that when I was trying to find mentorship, and recognize that I didn't actually have to look all over the place, that mentors are all around us, and being part of the university is really helpful. But the Lean In series obviously is just really book really is about how do we as women lean into our careers, even when we are balancing our work and life and children and parents, etc., all the things that that our previous guest just talked about. But she has a whole series now in its own podcast talking about Lean In. The best thing that I got out of her book, and I say it all the time, mostly I say it in my home, done is better than perfect. Mostly it's around my kids filling up the dishwasher now, done is better than perfect. But it really does help me also in my career, because because we are balancing so much, especially during the pandemic, it is okay to just get it done and it not be perfect. So the lean in, Sheryl Sandberg, that I think this is the quote I took away the most from her. But it also told me that I have to, be okay and do some better things to help me thrive. So a book that I've read multiple times, and it was started in a book club, is the book Thrive. So Arianna Huffington, she's the creator of Huffington Post, wrote about Thrive, and again, another woman leader who really helped me start to think about my own well-being. And she put it in 4 categories. I'm not sure that you all can see this as well, but it's well-being, wisdom, wonder, and giving. This book, which I continue to have to reread, because the well-being, especially, I think, is what I struggle with the most, is, how do we protect ourselves? And she really she wrote the book Thrive because she got into a car accident because she was not balancing well. The main things I got out of this book, although I continue to learn from it and continue to reread it, again, reading, I do it on Audible, is just getting effective sleep, and then reflecting back on what Jen says is just focusing back on the breath and breathing. So one of the ways that I've done that during the pandemic is I am now doing YouTube yoga with and the series is actually called Breath. So it's yoga with Adrienne, and it's really all about breathing. And I'm still not effectively getting good sleep, but this book, if I keep rereading it, perhaps I will actually get there. So this was I think a really great book that you can continue to learn from and read again and again. So obviously there are some books that we'll just read one time and get what we get out of it after that, first read. But for me, this book I need to continue to reread and re-engage in, and how do I, get to a better balance that I should have, as Jen pointed out, just from being a Gen Xer. Because I think that, especially as women leaders, we sometimes think that our exhaustion is actually a badge of honor, and I really obviously recognize that it's really just more a sign of chaos. I feel like today is one of those days, but if we can get us all to be with our squad and really get to a better place with thriving, we might actually get to creativity. So again, I've already shown you a couple slides from Creativity Inc. Again, this was the first book club that I hosted when I arrived at Rowan. Family Medicine, I think, still has it, although perhaps with the pandemic they haven't continued the series. But obviously we need to have balance in order to be creative. And I think that especially in this time of the pandemic, we're all looking for other sources of creativity, because Zoom calls aren't really getting us there anymore. So I've used this book. I reflect on it often to keep reinventing culture in the environments. Obviously, I'm in a new building now, so creating a culture here, creating a culture across our departments. I know that we're also trying to unify both our interaction with the university, and we have another medical school, and we're creating new partners with our different hospitals. So being creative and developing these relationships is really important. Obviously, this time of uncertainty is just so clear in our in our pandemic. And the reality is, I think many of us who chose medicine are creative, and we chose medicine because we don't really it's definitely a profession of uncertainty, even with our well-built-in algorithms of how we practice medicine. Nobody would have predicted how we would have had to respond to a pandemic. So, you know, I keep reflecting on this book and how I can continue to be creative. And in being creative, you know, we really have to choose, you know, opportunities that we can keep reinventing ourselves. So for me, it's continuing to read and using those formats in order to allow me to grow and to engage my teams, to engage new learners who somehow continue to keep getting younger as I keep getting older, and making sure that we actually purposefully try to, you know, give us the benefit of the doubt and really have a target on our own growth. So my newest book that I just started reading, and again, it's on Audible, is Worth Doing Wrong, The Quest for Building Culture. And within that, there is so basically, the author has created a culture in his company, which is very unique. It has nothing to do with medicine. He does advertising in, he advertises for personal injury lawyers, which I don't think that anyone would actually choose that job, but he's had a very successful career in it. And within one of his culture opportunities was creating the Better Book Club. So I'm thinking that now that we have one of our online learning experts, Jennifer, and we have this venue of women who really are dedicated to growing themselves, that we should create the Better Book Club and really help us all be engaged. So I'm going to again stop sharing here and just show you what that website looks like. So it actually incentivizes everyone to read more, but more on your own time, and you actually get points based on your reading, and then you give a little quote unquote book report, and then you can engage in different dialogues through it. And I just think that this venue seems like a really ripe opportunity to present a new way for us to re-engage and find our squad through a way that I like, through reading. But again, the nice part is you can get your own physical book, or you can do it on Audible. There's lots of different ways to engage. Again, a lot of the podcasts now share full books, so how you actually get the material would still enable us to kind of share our experience in reading and growth. And so that's been my experience. Again, as a professional commuter, I used to have a lot more time to engage in reading or listening to books on my commute. In my new location, I literally could ride my bike here now, which is a very different experience than me driving from New Jersey to Delaware. So what I'm hoping is that my books on tape, and again, I'm dating myself just saying on tape, but should become books on treadmill soon, so that I can re-engage in some of the techniques that Maria and Jennifer introduced to us on getting healthier during this pandemic too. So with that, I'll take any questions, and I guess Maria and Jennifer will as well. This is my team at Rowan Integrated Special Needs Center. So one of the ways that we continued to thrive is pet therapy. So we partnered with the pet therapy program that recently received the endowment. And so this is Vivian, one of our pet therapy dogs, and pretty confident that Vivian was more therapeutic to my staff than to my special needs patients who are getting the vaccine. I don't think that they needed Vivian quite as much as my staff did. So she was a welcomed team member. And I will stop sharing.
Great.
I guess we have about 10 minutes if anyone has any questions, and I think I see some in the chat. This might be for Jen and Maria, but what techniques do you use at home to counter stress?
Yeah, I'll jump on that one. I do, well, just like all of us, all three of us, Jen, Maria, and myself all said, breathing. I do a lot of that. Sometimes I'll sit here at my desk and I'll do what's called box breathing, where you hold one side of your nose in, you breathe through the other, you hold for a count of 2 or 3, open up the other side, let it out, and you kind of do that iteration a couple times. I also have a set of mala beads behind me, which are meditation beads. There's 108 beads, and I will pull the mala between my beads, pull the beads between my fingers, excuse me, to just kind of ground myself. Stretching, yoga, walks. Jen or Maria, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, and you know, something actually I don't have on my list. Every once in a while, I think maybe 1 or 2 nights a week, I will just watch a lighthearted comedy, a fun movie with my husband, or if he's working, I will watch it by myself. And I think that sometimes we tend to watch a great deal of not I don't know everyone's television habits, but heavy types of shows. And again, in the midst of all this, sometimes a lighthearted movie. I've also found that going for walks, we have beautiful grounds in our community, in our neighborhood, and going for walks and seeing if we run into someone, getting fresh air. So walks, fresh air, bicycle rides, silly movies. There's some of the things that I find are very good for alleviating stress.
And
Question
reading.
for all three of you. How do you give yourself permission to turn it all off when we're no longer leaving our homes, we have our work stuff, our home stuff. How do you give yourself permission to sit on the couch and watch something lighthearted when everything's staring at you?
It's so
That's
hard.
It's hard.
It is really hard. I actually wasn't giving myself permission, so I would actually turn the TV on, but have the computer sitting on my lap until my husband was like, it can't even be in the room. You have to not have it in the room if we're going to watch this. So, which was actually hard too. It was silly, but so I leave it in the office, and if we're going to turn on, it's usually Netflix for us. But if we're going to turn on the next series of whatever we're watching on Netflix, the computer can't be in the room.
That was one of the issues that we had talked about with the physical space, where home has merged into work. I think for those of us, anyone, if you can make a physical space that is separate from the rest. We have a small home, but you'll notice I have a door here. It's a little room. It's my office, and that's where I work. That's where I do my Rowan work and anything else. And at the end of the day, maybe 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, I close the door. It's done. The day is done. It's 8 o'clock at night, and move on to whatever, whether it's I call it a spa bath, taking a bath or a walk, or making a cup of herbal tea, and moving on to that restful part of the day. But a physical space and maintaining that is a good threshold to begin that process of turning it off.
And positive self-talk too. I'm terrible with getting on myself about just like what Jen was saying, having the computer with the TV, with the family, with everything, and you're distracted with all of them because you're paying a little bit of attention to each one, which prolongs the work that you're trying to do. Whereas if you had 5 minutes, you could just get it done and get it taken care of. And for me, negative self-talk, I was spiraling down that road where you're just, come on, Jen, you could do better than this. Like, let's get going. But switching that to positive self-talk, finding mantras. I'm here at my desk. I have these little cards that have little sayings on them every day. I pick one randomly. behind me, I have a flip-a-day calendar that like has a mantra on it or something that I need to do for myself, for my health and wellness. Turning all of that negativity, allowing it to exist, acknowledging that exists, and then throwing it away and figuring out a way to make it positive. That's been pretty relieving for me as I'm giving myself permission to stop working or stop doing school or stop nagging the kids or the husband because things are just not in alignment. That's probably that was probably one of the hardest things for me to do, was to start talking positively to myself. Any other questions?
Well, I think one of the comments that I've read a lot in chats, online or in groups, is how because women had to assume the majority of the home-based activities, the teaching, the schooling, the taking care of loved ones, our careers have suffered. And now we may not be the one who has been as prolific when it comes to, reports and grants and things published or whatever it would be that would get you to be promoted or up the hill to improve on your career. So I think we have to take back our lives for this reason as well, because we've lost about a year in doing this. Anyone want to comment?
Honestly, that's where lean in. Honestly, it's its whole basis. I think that's why I tend to reread things, because I do think that probably it's even more pertinent now. But it's just now we just add in pandemic to that. That's another, setback in female leadership and career building.
We have time for one more question, if there is any, or closing comments. Anyone from our group want to post this thing on the chat? If not, 30 seconds from each of you. Take home point.
I just want to thank you all for this opportunity. It's been a great year with Maria, exploring these, I don't want to say issues, but they were issues. And the two of us together amidst these conversations, she was able to help me through quite a bit of it and to get my Zen mindfulness self back that I had kind of lost through the doctorate and then again with the pandemic. So thanks to all of you for joining us today, so that way we can share our experiences.
And also a thanks to everyone involved and the connections. And without even knowing we were going to do this, the merge and meld and connection between the two presentations, I feel it was really meaningful, and hopefully other people will watch this and get something from it. But let's continue the conversation and work together to support each other.
I would echo that. So I would say continue to grow yourself, even if it's in a 15-minute podcast, an hour-long series of information, or a whole book. I look forward to another opportunity in perhaps building a better book club and continuing this group as my squad.
I want to thank all of you. You're right. This flowed beautifully. It really did. One way to promote ourselves, I know Jane will forward the slide pack to us. I think we should just find all the women in our circle and send it to them and tell them, watch this. It won't take long. You can watch it while you're ironing, if people iron these days or whatever. That's my calming event.